Okay, is it just me, but are kids getting much more ruder these days? And I know I'm not the only one who's thinking this way. Teachers are definitely feeling it, parents are constantly complaining about it, and even kids nowadays are even complaining that school is getting way too out of hand. So in this video, we're going to have a deep dive discussion on this matter. Has this always been a thing, or has social media and the way that we've given rudeness a platform through likes and comments and shares and retweets, etc., has that made matters worse? So stay tuned for this discussion. Okay, for this first section of this video, I really want to have a great conversation about media and the way that media has evolved and changed over times. And for reference, I'm 20 years old, so I'm going to give like a bit of perspective from when I was growing up in comparison to how kids are growing up now. When I think back at my childhood, one of my favourite things was literally growing up and watching TV. Truth be told, I remember on like Saturdays in like primary school, my sister and I would wake up at 7 a.m. to watch like brand new SpongeBob, brand new like, what else was on at that time? Like That's a Raven, Peppa Pig, you name it. Or coming back home from school at 4 p.m. without failure, watching Horror Henry. Like that was just like the best time. Oh, I miss those days. And one of the reasons why TV was such a safe haven for so many kids was because so many of these shows were actually designated with kids in mind. And I think back at those times and I also think about how it was such a great pacifier and safe haven for parents. Like for example, like your mum or your dad could be like in the kitchen for like an hour and then like their child is watching like Disney Channel for an hour. It's okay to be watching Disney Channel material for an hour. Completely fine. But nowadays, those lines have completely been blurred because so many kids right now are being raised on social media. And one thing about social media, it's harder to detect what a child has been consuming for like, let's say, even in like the span of an hour. I remember when I was younger, when I went to like the cinema, if I went to buy a DVD, I always used to be so like excited that one day I'm going to buy that 18 CD or that 18 DVD one day. Because, you know, there was like that differentiation of like 12, 15, 18. And as a child, like I knew my place, okay, this was what was for me. But nowadays, that line has really been blurred for so many kids because, well, for many, all kids to be fair, because even though watersheds are something that's in place in terms of TV, on social media, that is simply not the case because you can be scrolling and you can see like the most explicit things. I wanted to have that discussion on media and its evolution because it's really going to help us with this next section of this video. But if you enjoyed that little conversation that we had, you'll definitely enjoy these two videos that are out right now on this channel. So go check them out because they're great. Okay, for this next section of this video, we're going to talk about how kids are being raised online and the effects that it's having on them. As I said, I grew up in that whole Disney Channel, Nickelodeon renaissance of TV and content. And it's just so very sad, like in 2025, looking back at how so many of the child stars that we grew up on were actually suffering and struggling so much behind the scenes. And as a child or as an audience member, of course you don't know how the characters' lives are going on behind the scenes because point blank period, they were playing a character. They were playing a character. We never got to see glimpses of their home life. We never got to see glimpses of like what kind of life they're living behind the scenes. And if there was interviews, if there was like behind the scene clips of anything like that, it was definitely created and definitely had to fit that model of like Disney Channel and Nickelodeon approved. But nowadays with the world of social media that we're living in right now, the digital era as well, it's so much easier to gain access to people and it's so much easier to have a parasocial relationship with like creators and people online. And with that, it has so many like good and bad connotations. I want to start with the good parts first. The power of representation is something that's truly so beautiful and so sacred because it's one of those things where it's like you see someone who looks like you see someone who acts like you see someone who's like come from like the same background that you come in. And if you see them do something like immensely successful or something immensely well, it really lights that spark in you and like, oh crap, I can do that exact same thing. And truth be told, like social media isn't like entirely a bad thing. Social media doesn't have, not everyone on this platform wants to like promote hate or promote bad things. But even though that is the case, social media, like the world of like TikTok, Instagram and like Twitter, these are platforms and these are apps that even though children are on these platforms, it's not built for them. When I was younger, I really wanted to become an actor. Like that was like one of my first like aspirations. And I would say like the biggest reason why that was the case was because of the show Jessie. Like previously I'd watched shows like That's a Raven, Drake and Josh, Victorious, and obviously those shows are great, but it's like those teens that I was watching, like they were older than me. But for the first time I was watching kids who were like the same age range as me. Gone way too soon, like the whole world misses Cameron Boyce. Cameron Boyce was one of like the first people where I was like, that kid is so cool. I want to dance and I want to dress and I want to act like him. Like I wanted to be him. Truth be told, when I was like how old are you? Like 7 years old. And I knew if I wanted to be him, I had to be casted by like an agent director. I had to get an opportunity in order for me to act and showcase my talents. But nowadays, if you're a kid growing up, if you see, okay, I want to be like Charlie D'Amelio, I want to be like, who are the TikTok names? I don't know. I don't know that many TikTok names. If you want to be like these people, all you have to do is just have a phone and a TikTok account. You don't need to have like any special talents. You don't need to have any industry connections. If you want to be like someone you know on social media, if you want to be like, what's her name, Money May, just get your phone, just get your camera. That's it. That's it. That's all it requires. That's it. And that's proof of like really scary things of how like back in the day, like even though, okay, there was still obviously bad things that were going on, it was like children and child stars, like they were on TV, they were performers, they were playing characters. But nowadays, like the everyday life of like a child can now become content. So kids have gone from watching content to actually being content within themselves. And that's really scary to think about. If you think of people like the 8 Passengers or like the Ace Family, of how like, and there's so many more family channels out there. There's so many parents right now who are capitalizing off of their children. And the thing about capitalizing things about your children is that there's no rules or regulations. Like if I don't have a child. If I had like a child, like I could be filming them all day. On a TV center, it's completely illegal, but at home, that is not necessarily illegal. And when I look at like some of these family channels, you actually look at like the content that they're providing, and it's actually really like insensitive and like really not necessary at all. For example, it's like I remember in like the 8 Passengers family, there was a clip of the mum who was teaching her daughters how to like properly clean themselves and stuff. And it's like, why would you have that conversation on camera? Why on earth would you have that conversation with them on camera? And it's felt, sometimes you go on TikTok and you see there's literally like a child who's like, get ready with me for school, get ready with me while I talk about this. And it's like, you're literally like 7 years old. Like, why do you have that influencer voice inside of you? Oh, it's because they're actually being raised and engulfed on the world of social media. And to talk about me for a second, I don't like the app TikTok. Like, I don't hate the app. Like, I'm not saying like ban the app TikTok, but for me as a content creator, as someone who actually creates content, I don't like creating content on TikTok because I can have like a whole proper discussion about this, but I think like one of the biggest parts for me is like, I felt like when I was on that app, I was fake. And I felt like I had to like talk in a certain way or make my videos in a certain way in order to gain virality and attraction. Whereas on YouTube, right here, I feel fully comfortable. I feel fully comfortable like expressing myself and my opinions. And the reason being for that is like TikTok is a very much so like algorithm based like platform, and it's just like scroll. And it's actually very easy to just keep scrolling and scrolling. And to actually captivate and get the attention of like your audience, sometimes you have to do rage bait, sometimes you have to do clickbait, sometimes you have to like do something to make sure that they stay on your video. Because even though like it sounds so crazy to say out loud, like even to get someone to stay on your video for like 5 seconds on like Instagram Reels or TikTok is actually a mission within itself. I didn't like making videos for short attention. I didn't like making short attention span videos. And if you look at platforms like Instagram Reels or like on TikTok, some of the videos that perform really well are some that are just so like outrageous and just so bold or like disrespectful and rude, because that's what instantly gravitate, like that's what you're going to see. It's like, oh crap, like there's like drama going on, there's like a fight going on, like that's going to grab your attention as like a viewer or like an audience member. And unfortunately, like rage bait, clickbait, bold content, explicit content, that's what gets virality. And for so many kids who like are unfortunately on the platform who actually want to get like attention, they know, okay, this is like the kind of like mode that I have to possess on my videos in order to gravitate or get audience like reception. And here's the thing about like social media in general. If you create content, unless if you're like contractually like obliged to like Disney Channel or to like a business like such a name, if you make content, you have every single right to make whatever content you want to make. For me, like if I want to swear, if I want to cuss, if I want to like fully express myself online, I'm very much so allowed to do so, because I'm not like a representative of like Disney Channel or anything like that. Like this isn't like a platform, like this channel isn't for kids. If kids want to watch my channel, like that's on you, but like I'm not making content that's designated for like 7-year-olds. And it's very interesting because there's so many kids who are being raised online right now, being raised in like the whole world of social media. But if you ask like some of the content creators that they like watch like in the beginning of like their YouTube journey, hey, like do you intend to have like a children audience? Many of them would actually say no. And I think of like creators like Chunks and like Beta Squad and like the Siremen, like kaicenat, like I want to actually like sit down and ask them like, did you actually intend to have such a global mass predominant child audience? I look at a creator like Chunks. I remember like Chunks in like the beginning of like his YouTube journey and like his Snapchat story days, he very much so, like, he didn't have a filter in, like, the best way possible. The best way possible. And you could just tell that Chunks, like, him and his friends, like, they'll just put on the camera and they'll literally just record. Whatever comes into their minds, they'll literally just say it. And that's why, like, so many people, like, they look back at, like, his old videos and, like, oh my gosh, like, to this day, like, you see, like, the comments still active. It's like, this video is so flipping funny. And even though that's not to say that he's not funny nowadays, you can definitely say, and I think he will say that, like, within himself as well, now his brand is very much so restricted. What he can post and what he can say is very much so restricted, because now with, like, the beta squad, with, like, his brand deals, he kind of has to uphold this certain image. I actually don't know how old he actually was in, like, the beginning of his YouTube journey, but I'm pretty sure you can see, like, him and his friends, they were, like, 18 plus. So lots of the conversations, lots of the jokes that they were making was, like, 18 plus. And I can't find the clip anyway. I've been trying to find it. But I remember that there was a video where Chunks was sitting down and he was talking about how there was one, like, he used to say in his videos, like, all the time, like, bunda, bunda, bunda. And then, like, there was this one girl who recorded her little brother, who was literally, like, 5 or 6 or something like that. And he kept saying bunda, bunda because, like, he has heard it from a Chunks video. And for him, it made him feel so very bad because, like, crap, like, this is the kind of effect I'm having on children. Even though he, like, when he started his YouTube journey thing, like, he wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be, like, the next, like, That's a Raven or the next, like, you know, Disney Channel image. Like, that burden and that responsibility kind of just hit him. And it's not just him, like, so many creators in that exact same boat as well. And here's the thing, right? This is something it's not new. But when it comes to, like, media, when it comes to content, kids imitate what they hear and what they see. And when it comes to, like, something like imitating, like, words and phrases from Disney Channel shows back in the day, sometimes it was like, okay, these were, like, words or phrases or conversations that were, like, designated for children, so it was okay to talk about. But nowadays, where, like, kids can be like on a playground in 2025 talking about, like, pop the balloon, talking about smash or passes, talking about, oh, this is how we're gonna rate things. And it's like I think that's just, like, visible proof of, like, how, like, the lines and, like, the blur of lines between, like, preteen content and, like, content that are, like, for teens and kids, like, that whole line has been blurred so much. And here's the thing, like, kids, like, imitate and see so much of, like, the content that they're digesting, and they so automatically think, like, this is right, or, like, this can get me a platform. If you look at these people, like the Sneakos, the Aiden Rosses, the Andrew Tates, how much of, like, an effect that they've been able to have on, like, a generation of young men. And a video clip that I always mention, that video clip of Sneako that I'm gonna put right here.
Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman! What? No, wait. We love women. We love women. We love women. But not like transgender. Yes, sir. We love everybody. No. Okay.
We live in a world right now where so much rudeness, misogyny, sexism, like, just so much, like, hatred and anger has been able to get so much of, like, a huge platform. And when you're a child, when you're impressionable, when you're young, you automatically just see, like, the numbers, you see the views, and you see, like, just how, like, mainstream, like, hatred is able to get. So it kind of raises an eyebrow of your kid. It's like, okay, so if I say this kind of stuff, if I talk about this, if I talk about that, even if it's, like, just so rude and harmful, that can actually get me a platform, that can actually get me likes, that can actually get me, like, shares and reposts, which will eventually lead to monetization. The affluence of media is so real, and so many brands and so many, like, businesses are actually trying to capitalize off of, like, YouTube and, like, the world of social media. We've seen that in, like, platforms like Foot Asylum, Pretty Little Thing, Channel 4.0. They're really trying to tap into that kid audience online. Which really nicely leads me on to my next point of this video, Channel 4.0's new show titled Minor Issues. And guys, I've got a few different opinions about this, and I don't want to be that friend that's too woke, but let's have a discussion. Okay, so if you've never heard of the show Minor Issues is a show that is on Channel 4.0, and it's basically designated to get, like, to encapsulate the audience of, like, Gen Z and young people. Okay, think of a show like X Factor, where there's, like, judges and there's, like, contestants on stage. But flip the script where, like, the judges are basically children, and there are people who are on stage who are adults. It's not like one person at a time, it's like a group of adults. And they discuss lots of issues like dating or, like, societal matters, and yeah, just very much so, like, raw, deep discussions. And it's all filmed in, like, a studio space. And even though I said, like, discussion and stuff like that, it's not really like a discussion, like, where we learn from each other kind of thing. It's mainly like clapbacks and, like, lots of roasts and stuff like that. And I feel like there's lots of disrespect as well. I think some of those kids are a bit too bold. And yeah, that's why I say I don't want to be that friend that's too woke, because I have a sense of humor, and like I don't want to sound like too sensitive. But I think some things are just weird.
I have a question. What does freak of the week mean?
Alright, eat it. I'm a good eater. I like to eat.
Same question as Auntie. How would you hype up a crowd?
I twerk.
But before I get into that, I feel like this show is like the perfect proof of like how the lines between like children, preteens, and adults have like really been like fizzled and dissolved. Because this is a show where like kids in like primary school can watch this, and kids who are like 18 plus can actually watch this. And how many shows out there can encapsulate that big of a wide range of an audience? Okay, as someone who's like been like a fan of like Foot Asylum and like some like the content that like Channel 4 and like JD have like done it before, this is the one show where I'm like, I'm not 100% too sure about, because like I feel like it proper promotes like bad mouths and like capitalizes of like bad behavior from children. Before I deep dive into the show minor issues, I kind of want to talk a bit about school and like cast your mind back to secondary school. I know it was a bit of a time, but let's think. When it came to school, there was two ways to get popularity. The first way, which is the best way, there was just so many people who like just exuded popularity. Like they were just such nice people that everyone wanted to be around them, and they treated people like really nicely. That's the good popularity. If you want to be popular, that's what you want to be. But the second way was like, you know, like the mean popular people, where it's like they were kind of like the bullies, and they kind of like made jokes and made fun of people in order to get like popularity. And usually when it came to those people, like they had like ringleaders and people around them who were kind of like suck-ups to them essentially, in order to just keep themselves like out of getting like roasted or being seen as like uncool. And it's something that's been like this for like basically forever. In school, it's very easy to pick on like the people who are like the most vulnerable, the people who have got like social anxiety, or like they keep to themselves. You see that they're timid or like weak, for example. It's very easy to pick on those kinds of people, and like the popular people get to like kind of like just laugh from those people. And like in school, like when you're a teenager specifically, like the only thing that you want to do is to be liked and to get like approval from people, even if they're like bad people in general. It's like that approval is something that's like a nice feeling. So one of the ways that you can get like approval from like the mean popular people is to like start bad mouthing people, to start like gossiping or like spreading like rumors and stuff like that, because it shows that like you're not like them, like you're kind of more like it's very easy to be influenced by bad people is what I'm trying to say. And you kind of like think back at like a time like school, where it's like the people who are like disrupting lessons, the people who are like arguing with like teachers, who are like bullying or like making fun of like the kids who are younger than them, like those were the ones who were like popular, because like they kind of had that like rite of passage, like okay, you've done this, so it's like you're like the popular one now. And it's like that sort of nature has like transcended into the world of social media. What I mean by this, like on the world of social media, like 24/7, you'll always see like a video, like a viral video of like someone like yelling or making fun of like a pizza delivery guy. You see like virality so much through like rudeness and toxicity. And when you're young, as I said earlier in the video, you just see like, oh, viral content, rudeness, it's getting so many comments, so many views, so many shares. Like that's okay behavior, because that's what I see online, and that's what I see actually gets like monetization and actually gets put into like such huge platforms. And I feel like a show like Minor Issues on Channel 4.0 like really taps into this and capitalize off of this, because it's like I feel like, okay, even though like the people, like the contestants and stuff like that, like they're established like rappers and stuff like that, like they're much older than the kids who are the judges. And it's like, for me, I can't even imagine like when I was their age talking to like a bunch of like 21-year-olds the way that they talk to a bunch of 21-year-olds. And I think it's so crazy how like nowadays so many kids don't really fear talking to people older than them. When you're in year 7, you put your bag, the bell rings, you run. You don't even like interact, you don't even look at the people who are older than you. That's how I was when I was in year 7, right? And it's like nowadays, like it's crazy how like kids just feel so much more confident speaking to adults that way, or like just speaking to people older than them that way. And not even like in like a confident speaker kind of way, but in like a disrespectful manner as well. And I realized another reason why it's just so much easier for like a kid nowadays to speak to someone older than them is because they're all watching and consuming the media or music that's on like the exact same level. And when this show becomes like a template of how young people should act online, at home, or at school in general, that's when we've got a really big problem, which nicely leads me into this next point that we're going to talk about: school. I'm going to tell you guys a fun fact about me. The first job that I ever wanted to be when I was younger was a teacher. That was the first job I ever wanted to have. And when someone asked me what job I wanted to be in the future, I was like, I want to be a teacher one day. I was instantly yelled at, don't ever become a teacher because teachers don't get paid anything. You need to dream bigger. And so that dream was eventually shattered. But honestly, you know, deep down, part of me wouldn't mind getting into the whole teacher profession. I think that like the job description of like a teacher, like it's so cute and it's so like, it's just, I think it's one of like the most like beautiful things that you can do, like to be able to like teach young people. Wow, like, I think that's like, it's such a great profession, like the title of it. However, having to teach young people, teach people that you can, I'm not too sure if I'd want to do that. Actually, no, scratch that. The thought of teaching people doesn't scare me. Having to deal with young people, now that scares me. Ooh. This is a small thing that I feel like so many of us have this as well. Even though I'm 20 years old, I'm basically a grown adult. When I see a group of teenagers, okay, you guys the same? If I see like a group of teenagers, I'll cross the road. You know why? Because I don't want to get roasted. I don't want to be, I just know, because I'm like, they're looking at me and they're judging me. And it's so crazy because like, if someone my age or someone older than me made fun of me, I don't take that personally at all. I'll be like, okay, you're just weird. I'll cuss you out to your face, right? But if a group of like teenagers cuss me out or made fun of me, I'll just be like, oh no, or something like that. And maybe, I don't know, like, it'll just hit different. It's like, how are you younger than me and you're making fun of me and you're walking over me? Like, yeah, it's mad. So if we're feeling that inclination of like, I don't even want to like help or be around young people, teachers are feeling that the absolute most, because their job involves actually being day in, day out with young people of today. And teacher burnout is at an all-time high. There's been an all-time high of teachers just walking out of the job. The education system is slowly but surely actually failing. And so many people are asking themselves, are Gen Z unteachable? There have been educators who have been like teaching for like a good like 30 years, 40 years. And like they're saying, I've never actually had to deal with like, of course there's always been like bad kids, rude kids, like behavior issues. Like that's nothing new. But the degree that like Gen Z like encapsulates all of these like behavior issues, it's like they've educators who have been around for like 30, 40 years, as I've said, like they've never had to deal with like a generation like this before. I feel like with a show like Minor Issues, if like bad behavior and bad mouths are put on like a pedestal or on a platform on like a YouTube space, and I forgot to mention like Channel 4.0, like that Minor Issues show is their best performing show on like their YouTube platform. Like it's performing really, really well, which goes to show that so many young people are watching this and being influenced by a show like this. And I feel like with those kinds of behaviors, if they are mimicked and are mimicked in like a classroom setting, how on earth is like a teacher meant to teach an environment like that, where like there's so many kids who want to, you know, annoy the teacher or try and get like virality by maybe like recording like their teacher like crashing out or like getting mad at like a classroom, for example. And like this is something that I mentioned in like the last section of this video as well, is like so many of like the kids who are like in classroom settings, they're like, oh yeah, I want to like piss off the teacher. I want to be like the one that's like the class clown who makes the teacher mad, who like, you know, disrupts learning, because like that's kind of like cool. That's what's going to get me like entertainment and popularity, right? And it's like the most frustrating thing about like, I say being like a teacher is that they have to deal with like people, like deal with students like that. But it's like when they have to like report that to like their parents, like parents actually don't really care or aren't as like alarmed or switched on by like bad behavior. And it gets to a point, right, where it's like teachers are actually human beings. Like if they feel like they're getting walked over, they don't have support, they're being like disrespected, ignored, they have to play like therapist, they have to play the role of like a mum or dad. It kind of gets to a point where it's like there's only so much teachers can do until they're like, you know what, I'm done with this job. Because it gets to a point where it's like teachers, like their sole priority should be to like teach your kids and make sure that they get a good education. And of course there's like safeguarding and well-being, like that's equally important as well. But it's like these teachers, like they can't be like, they're not babysitters, they can't raise your kids, they can't teach kids like values of like respect and like love. Like that's not obviously like schools obviously promote that kind of stuff, but it's not a teacher's responsibility to make sure that kids are good people. And here's a very interesting discussion that we can have right now. Lots of kids don't actually care for school or actually care for education in general. And I feel like a huge reason why that is the case is because back in, I'm saying it like I'm like old or something like that, but I'd say like 20 years ago, even like 10 years ago, the gateway to success was like school, like it was like primary school, secondary school, sixth form, university. That was the pathway to success. So even though like people like mucked around in school, when it came to like exam time, it was like, okay, I actually need to be serious. I need to like sit down on my books, because if I do well, that's what's actually going to get me like a good flipping life. But nowadays, in like the digital era that we're living in, so many people have jumped the gun of like education in general, and maybe they failed all their GCSEs, they failed all their A-levels, but actually, get this, more successful than the people who actually did so well in school. So that line of like, okay, education is important, education is going to get you the best thing in life, that line has completely fizzled and blurred because of like but that like Gen Z can't really help that, because like that's just the era that they've grown up, that they're growing up in. So like there's some kids who like go into school and they're like, why am I here? What's the point of this? I'm learning about like chemistry, I'm learning about science, but I generally don't care. So it kind of has this like I don't give a attitude in like school, right? I don't know, I did that. So I feel like so many kids like they have this in mind, so when they go to school they're not afraid to like slag off teachers or like to be like rude or like misbehaving, because like it doesn't matter. It generally doesn't matter. Like this education thing, like it doesn't matter, because if I fail, if I don't do well, like my life is still going to be okay. Like education's not as big as it used to be. I just feel like post 2020 and like post lockdown learning, I feel like that's had such a huge effect on children and like their stances of like how they approach education. Because I feel like when we came out of like lockdown learning, I found it so hard to do work. So like when we came out of lockdown learning, I was in like sixth form. I just found it so hard to just sit down and get work done. I was like, oh my gosh, like thank God I've only got like a year or 2 years left of education, then I'm out of here. So it's like I couldn't imagine like being in school right now, because I feel like I just wouldn't. I feel like it would have been harder for me to grow up education right now. I can't lie. So it's like if the students aren't motivated, if the students actually generally don't want to be there, then that ripple effect is going to have an effect on teachers as well. They're like, so why should I be here? Why should I be educating or like paying all this extra effort into people who they don't even want to be here at all, or don't really like value or care for education that much? And it begs so many questions. So many people think like the school system and like curriculums need like a full factory cultural reset right now, because it's just not so much like applicable to children in 2025 anymore. What do you guys think about that? So if school is in chaos and shambles, and if teachers are walking out, where did all of this bad behaviour in kids come from? Which brings us to the root of so many of these problems right now that we're facing right now in the world right now: parents and parenting. Let's have this debate and discussion right now. I'm really excited for this section of this video, because we're going to talk about like parenting and parenting in 2025, because parenting in 2025 holds lots of like unique issues and dilemmas that maybe something that was not thought of like 30 or 20 years ago per se. Parenting has really changed and evolved in like the span of like 30, 40, 50 years. And I'll definitely say like one of the biggest reasons as to why that is the case is because of this era of like digital media and social media that we're living in right now. Parenting in its true nature, in terms of like raising kids and making sure that they like provide something good for society and all of that good stuff, that's something that hasn't changed at all in like ever in human history and human nature. But there are lots of like modern day parental like struggles and dilemmas that maybe like 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago weren't spoken about, because it just wasn't happening. For example, like the world of social media, as I've mentioned, like that's something that's changed and evolved even like in the span of like 20 years, 10 years, has evolved and changed so much that parents have to keep up with the times, quite literally. And the way that we talk about like discipline and the way that we talk about raising kids has become such like a discussion. I don't know what the word is, but what's the word? Sensitive topic of discussion, where it's like, can you say that? Can you do that anymore? Is that effective discipline, or is that abuse? Like there's been so many like discussions that have taken place right now because of parenting. And topic that I've spoken about in this channel is like tough love parenting. And tough love parenting is something that's got layers to it, and it can be effective when done well. Tough love is essentially like, okay, I'm going to tell you this straight. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel with the intent of making someone better. And when you like raise kids in like a tough love environment or manner, it's kind of like you don't sugarcoat things. You don't beat around the bush. You don't say, you know, maybe you could have improved with this. No, this is what you did. This is what you did wrong. And it's what you have to do to improve. It's a bit more direct and a bit more forward. And one thing, like when you learn from like the generations that have come before us, when you hear about stories that they talk about like their parents or like their grandparents or like the people that raised them, very strict, very firm. Like if you say something wrong, if you do something disrespectful, if you act out, quite literally. So when it comes to like being raised on like strict parenting, so many kids were able to come out of that fine or good people in society. I say that very loosely, but there's so many people who are like so grateful to have like been raised on like strict, tough parenting, because it's like, okay, that really jolted me. It's like, if I do something wrong, if I do something disrespectful, I don't even do that. Like, I don't even think of that, because like, I know there's that fear of like, okay, mom's going to belt me, dad's going to belt me, so I'm not going to even entertain doing nonsense, right? And once upon a time, all of this stuff, the beatings, if you did that in public, if you did that in someone else's home, like that was just the norm of discipline. That was the norm of raising children. But nowadays, if like a video comes out of like a mum or a dad belting like their kids or like slapping their kids, you know, CPS could be, what is that, CPS, right? Child Protective Service. They can be called, they could be taken from like, you know, it can be labeled as abuse and it can be labeled as like torture. And as a result of this, lots of parents are leaning into soft parenting. And soft parenting is defined as a style of parenting that emphasizes empathy, understanding, and connection with children. And it's a more gentle approach that focuses on like building a positive relationship with like parent and child. And here's the thing with like strict parenting is like, strict parenting, you can get like really good kids. You can get kids who are like aligned and like do really, really well with like their education, but it can really like psychologically mess with them in like the long run. Look at someone like Michael Jackson. Of course, he amounted to like so much like immense stardom and fame and success, but he still had like so many like issues that were unresolved with like him and his father, and like he resented and was so fearful of his child like up until like his whole life in general. One can argue like the most loving thing that you can do for your child is to set them straight and to make sure that they are good people in the world. And if that means like belting them, if that means slapping them to keep them in check and keep them in line, then that's what you have to do. Because now, okay, if you slap your child, if you belt your child, you know, okay, they're not going to run off and be bad people on the streets. You know, okay, if they say that they're going out and they're going here, they actually mean that they're going there. But these people who are raised, like, if you're raising your kids as like your best friend or raising them on like soft, weak parenting, they can A, just walk all over you, or B, it's like, when it's time to be strict, when it's time to be firm, because children do need that firm, and they need that like foundation of like toughness. If you don't implement that in like their childhood and like the early ages, if they act out when they're like 17, 18, how on earth are they going to listen to you? Okay, you guys go to yoga together, you guys go like on family camping trips, cool, great. But it's like when it's time for you to actually be a parent, when it's time to be like a stern authoritative figure, where are you? And that begs the question where so many people are like, okay, if you want to know why kids are rude today, it's because of weak parenting. It's because slapping your kids or belting your kids is seen as abuse right now. And that's why kids are able to, if they can walk all over their parents like a carpet, they can walk over their teachers, their educated people, just general people in public areas in general, because their parents haven't put them in line, their parents haven't put them in check. And here's when things start to really contradict themselves. As much as people are like, oh yes, bring back tough parenting, bring back strict parenting, sometimes it can really actually have such a terrible effect on children. And that's something that we can't downplay at all. When I say this, I mean this. I'll literally never forget this. I remember one time I was like 6, 7 years old, and I was at an auntie's house. And I remember her daughter did something wrong. And mind you, her daughter was like 4 years old, maybe like 4, I'm going to say like 4 years old, right? She'd done something wrong. I think she maybe like she just grabbed something or she hit someone. It was something like small or minuscule like that. And I remember her dad came in and saw that she had done something wrong. And when I tell you, her dad came in, it was like all hell broke loose. He came with a belt and he was belting her and he was belting her and he was belting her and he was belting her. And when I tell you this broke my heart. Every single time I think about this. Poor baby girl was literally just like, she was crying on the floor with literally like her hands out like this, us literally like crying, shouting for him to stop. And he just kept belting her and belting her and belting her and belting her. And when I tell you this, like, even though she had done something wrong, and of course children do deserve discipline, I was like, he's taking things way too far. It gets to a point with like beating culture where so many kids start to feel like a punching bag, where it's like, oh yeah, it's like, okay, the kid's done something wrong, like, let's get the belt, let's get the belt, let's get the belt. And I feel like discipline is about communication, because it's like, okay, you've done something wrong, I'm going to punish you, I'm going to tell you off. But at the end of the day, the child needs to know, okay, I've done something wrong and the punishment that I got was extremely deserved. They need to look back and say, okay, that was actually deserved. So if this girl, when I tell you she was 4, maybe she might have just pulled someone's hair or like grabbed something that she didn't need to grab. And her dad just gave her lashes upon lashes upon lashes upon lashes. That is not strict parenting. That is not tough parenting. That is abuse. And it's like, I feel like lots of people are like, oh, parenting has become so microanalyzing. You can't say this, you can't do this anymore, you can't do this anymore. Just because something was like taking place for like a long period of time, just because it happened to your parents or your grandparents, doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't mean that it hasn't affected them, and doesn't mean that we can't equally call out bad things that's happened in the past. I equally believe that we can call out things that have gone wrong in the past, and we can equally call out things that are going on right now. There's whole debate on like whether your child should be like your best friend or like it should be like that parent-child relationship. I feel like your child can be like your best friend, but they also need to respect you at the exact same time. And it's like, if you speak to your child like that, if you beat them relentlessly, how do you expect them to have a relationship with you 18 years down the line? How? This is something that's really, really deep. There's so many kids who can like look back and think of like all the beatings and like all the lashes that they've got from their parents. They can think of more beatings and lashes than they can think of like happy memories and happy moments of joy with their parents. And I feel like lots of people have got like, who had like strict parents and tough parents, they're the ones who want to lean into like that soft parenting wave, because it's like, I don't ever want my child to fear me the way that I feared like my parent, for example. I feel like we have to encapsulate like the bit of both worlds, a bit of tough parenting and a bit of soft parenting, and like that tough love. I feel like you can learn from both ends, the good and the bad. Okay, every parenting style is different, but for me, whenever I become a parent, I'm going to implement tough love, I'm going to implement like strict parenting, but also I'm going to implement joy and laughter and fun. And because you need both. I also really don't like this portrayal of like, okay, the dad is the stern one and the mum is the loving one, because then that kind of plays for like that good cop, bad cop. You get one parent that's good and one parent that's bad. Both parents need to be copped on. Both parents need to be like a face of like discipline and respect, and both parents need to also provide elements of joy and happiness and laughter as well. So when it comes to so many of these disrespectful kids, so many of these kids who are like just so rude, hey, I didn't get into this. So many kids can be so rude because of their parents being so tough and so strict on them. I'll tell you this. So many kids, right, when they're raised on like tough love parenting, like the strictest of the strictest upon strictest, whenever they go out into the real world, whenever they go out and, you know, start dating, start like going out to parties, 18 plus, go off to uni, they don't know how to act, because it's like the first time that they're ever tasting freedom, right? So now they're going to do all these crazy things, and it's just, they just know how to hide so many things from their parents, because like, if my mom finds out about this, my dad finds out about this, I'm toast. So I'm going to do things in like a very sneaky manner so that they don't know. And I have to say like this, it gets to a point where it's like, there's only so many times that you can beat your child. It kind of gets to a point where it's like, let's say like your child is disrespectful at like the age of like 20 or 25 years old or something like that. If you as a parent just start yelling at them, start doodling them, and then it's like, the child will be like, okay, then hit me then. Hit me. It kind of gets to a point where it's like, hitting and like getting belted with, it kind of gets to a point where it's like, it doesn't even though it hurts, it really hurts, it kind of gets to a point where it's like, it become like a default kind of thing. And those are the people to be scared of, when they're just like, okay, hit me then, hit me, go. Because that's when they feel like invincible and feel powerful, and that's the ones that... Yo, guys, I don't know why, but for some reason, I lost the footage of me saying bye to you guys. And the audio might be a little bit muffled right now because I'm filming. I say filming. I'm recording this on my laptop. I just want to ask you guys a question, just to throw like the mic back at you guys. Have you guys also noticed this shift in rudeness as well? Maybe if you're watching this, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you've got younger siblings, let me know. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much, so very much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you guys so much. Road to 1K, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace and blessings to all of you guys.